Samantha Harris had never been one to shy away from a challenge. But this time, the stakes were higher than ever. After years of working for someone else, she had finally saved enough to start her own business. The problem? The market was saturated, and the risk was enormous. But there was something inside her, a drive, a fire, that told her this was the right decision. If I don't do this now, I'll regret it for the rest of my life, she thought, staring at her reflection in the mirror. It wasn't the first time she'd had doubts. After all, she was about to pour every last dime she had into a dream that seemed almost impossible. She had a business plan, a vision, and a burning passion to succeed. But there was a problem. She had no idea how to scale it. Her savings were meager, and she was facing an uphill battle. The first few months were going to be crucial, make it or break it. Would it pay off? Or would she fall flat on her face? But Samantha wasn't afraid of failure. It was the uncertainty that kept her awake at night. Every move she made felt like a gamble, but she couldn't shake the thought. The risk might just be worth it. The first few months were a blur. Samantha's days consisted of back-to-back meetings, endless brainstorming sessions, and countless sleepless nights. Every time she thought she was making progress, the setbacks seemed to come twice as hard. She had already exhausted most of her savings, and now she was relying on credit cards just to keep the business afloat. She thought about quitting, thought about walking away from it all, but something inside her refused to give up. "I've come too far to turn back now," Samantha muttered to herself one night, staring at her computer screen. The numbers didn't add up, the market wasn't responding as she hoped, and every new investor she pitched turned her down. But no matter how many times the doors slammed shut, Samantha kept knocking. In those quiet moments of doubt, she'd hear the words of her mentor echoing in her mind. "The risk you take will determine the reward you reap." She didn't know if she was ready for what lay ahead, but she knew she couldn't quit. Not yet. The phone rang. On. Samantha picked it up without thinking. It was a call from a potential investor who had shown interest months ago, but had suddenly gone silent. "Samantha, we've been reviewing your pitch. It's not perfect, but there's potential here," the investor said, their tone indifferent. Samantha's heart skipped a beat. This was the break she'd been waiting for. "We're willing to give you a chance, but you'll have to prove yourself." The words hung in the air as Samantha processed them. She had been given a lifeline, but the pressure was overwhelming. The investor wanted to see results. Fast. No more excuses. The next few weeks would determine the course of her company. "We're in," Samantha said, her voice barely above a whisper, filled with a mix of excitement and fear. "I won't let you down." With the new investment secured, Samantha dove into work with renewed vigor. She reorganized her team, revamped the business strategy, and focused on delivering results that would meet the investors' expectations. Days blended into nights, and every decision felt like it could either make or break the company. During one of these late-night sessions, her loyal confidant, Jake, stepped into her office. He had been with her from the beginning, but now he could see the toll it was taking on her. "You're pushing yourself too hard," Jake said, his voice filled with concern. "You can't do this alone. We need to pace ourselves." Samantha looked up, exhaustion in her eyes. She hadn't realized how much the stress was affecting her until now. But giving up was never an option. "I can't stop, Jake. Not now, not when it's this close." But deep down, she knew that the real challenge was just beginning. The road ahead would require more than just hard work. It would demand sacrifices she hadn't yet considered. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, presentations, and unexpected challenges. Samantha's startup was gaining traction, but there were moments when it felt like everything was falling apart. Her biggest rival, a well-established company, was now making aggressive moves to shut her down. It seemed like the odds were stacked against her. But then one evening, after another long day of pushing the limits, Samantha sat down with her laptop and came across an unexpected email. A new partnership offer. A company that had once been a competitor had reached out with an offer to collaborate. It wasn't the deal she had envisioned, but it was a chance to finally break into the market. This partnership could change everything. Samantha stared at the screen, her pulse quickening. It was another risk, but it was the kind of opportunity she had been waiting for. If she said yes, it could either make her business soar or sink it completely. But she wasn't afraid anymore. "Let's do this," Samantha whispered to herself, pressing the reply button. She was all in. With the new partnership in place, Samantha felt the pressure mount. The collaboration opened doors to new opportunities, but it also meant she was now tied to another company's expectations. Every move she made was scrutinized, every decision questioned. "I thought this would be easier," Samantha muttered, her head resting on her desk late one evening. "What if I made the wrong choice?" The numbers weren't adding up. Sales were lower than expected, and the new products weren't resonating with customers. Samantha's heart raced as she scrolled through reports, trying to find the cause of the dip. It wasn't the product, it wasn't the branding, something deeper was at play. "It's my approach," she realized, pushing back from the desk. "I've been too focused on the wrong things." The fear of failure loomed larger than ever, but in that moment, Samantha understood that success would require more than just hard work. It required innovation and adaptability. The next few days were filled with brainstorming sessions, product tweaks, and market analyses. Samantha worked tirelessly, diving into customer feedback, analyzing competitors, and refining her approach. One afternoon, Jake walked into the office with a cup of coffee in his hand. "You've been at this for hours. Take a break." Samantha looked up, her eyes tired but determined. "I can't, Jake. I need to make this work. I can't let the pressure win." Jake set the coffee down on her desk and sat across from her. "I know you're scared, but you're overthinking it. Trust your instincts. What made you successful in the beginning wasn't just the strategy. It was your drive, your vision. Don't lose sight of that." His words hit Samantha harder than she expected. She had been so focused on the details, she had forgotten why she started in the first place. This was her dream, and no amount of failure or fear could take that away. The next major step was pitching to a new investor, one who could give her business the resources it desperately needed. But this pitch was different. It wasn't just about numbers and projections, it was about passion, vision, and a story. Samantha knew this would be her biggest challenge yet. As the meeting began, she could feel the weight of every word. "We're not just selling a product," Samantha said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "We're selling a vision of innovation, of change, of something that disrupts the status quo." The investor, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes, listened closely. She didn't interrupt, but Samantha could tell she was weighing every word. For a moment, Samantha felt vulnerable, as if her whole future was hanging by a thread. Then, the investor nodded. "I believe in your vision," she said, her tone calm but approving. "Let's talk numbers." Samantha let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She had done it. The deal wasn't signed yet, but this was the breakthrough she needed. A week later, the deal was finalized. With the new investment secured, Samantha was able to hire additional staff, expand operations, and increase marketing efforts. Things were looking up. But just as she thought she had turned a corner, her biggest competitor, Linkstech, launched a counterattack. They copied her product, rebranded it, and priced it lower. Samantha watched in disbelief as her own idea was diluted, her hard work threatened by a company with more resources and power. It was a blow to her confidence, but it also ignited a new fire inside her. "I'll show them," Samantha thought, standing up from her desk. "They think they can copy us. They have no idea who they're dealing with." She gathered her team for a meeting, ready to pivot, ready to fight back. The competition wasn't just a challenge, it was a call to arms. The next few months became a battle of wills. Samantha's company fought back with everything they had, innovating, improving, and refining their product to stay ahead of the competition. It wasn't easy, and there were days when she questioned whether it was worth it. But in the midst of all the chaos, something unexpected happened. The media started to take notice. Articles were written about her business, about her resilience, her innovation, and her refusal to give up. She had become an underdog story, one that resonated with the public. Samantha smiled for the first time in a long while. She had gained something more valuable than just market share. She had earned the trust of the people. Samantha sat at her desk, reviewing the latest quarterly results. The numbers were promising, but something was off. She couldn't shake the feeling that one of her closest allies, someone she'd trusted from the beginning, was not being entirely honest with her. Jake, her co-founder and right-hand man, had been distant for weeks, and Samantha had started noticing discrepancies in the way he handled the company's finances. "This isn't like him," she muttered under her breath, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She wanted to trust him, but the evidence was piling up. "I have to know the truth," she thought, steeling herself for what might come next. Samantha knew that if her suspicions were correct, this could tear apart everything she had worked so hard for. Later that day, Samantha confronted Jake in the company's conference room. She had gathered all the evidence, the missing funds, the irregularities in the transactions, and the unexplained expenses. "Jake, I need you to explain this," she said, her voice steady but her heart racing. Jake, who had always been her partner in crime, seemed to falter for a moment. "I don't know what you're talking about, Sam," he said, avoiding her gaze. But Samantha had seen enough. She placed the papers on the table, her eyes locking onto his. "I trusted you. If you've been stealing from this company, if you've been sabotaging everything I've built." Her voice trailed off as the weight of the betrayal hit her. Jake's silence spoke volumes. "I thought we were in this together," she whispered, her heart breaking. Jake's confession hit Samantha harder than she could have imagined. "I needed the money," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "The pressure got to me, Sam. I thought if I just took a little, no one would notice." Samantha's heart pounded as she processed his words. "You've been stealing from me? From us?" she asked, her voice cold. "I had to, Sam. The debt, the bills. I didn't know who else to turn to." Jake's voice cracked, but Samantha couldn't bring herself to feel sorry for him. Her entire world, her business, was now on the line because of his greed. "This company is everything to me," she said through gritted teeth. "And you just put it all at risk for a few dollars." Jake looked up, his eyes filled with regret. "I'm sorry, Sam. I'll do anything to make it right." But Samantha didn't know if she could ever trust him again. The damage was done, and it was up to her to pick up the pieces. The next few days were a blur of hard decisions. Samantha had to decide whether to cut ties with Jake or give him a second chance. Her business was growing, but the weight of the betrayal lingered, casting a shadow over everything. She knew that moving forward would be difficult. Without Jake, she'd lose a key team member and partner. But the trust that had been broken couldn't be repaired so easily. "I can't let this define me," she thought, as she made the decision to let Jake go. It was painful, but Samantha knew it was necessary. "I have to build this empire on my own terms," she reminded herself. With Jake out of the picture, Samantha had to rebuild the trust and team she needed to push forward. She would do it herself, or she would fail trying. With the decision to part ways with Jake behind her, Samantha poured herself into the business even more. She rebuilt her team, focused on the brand, and reworked her business model to adapt to new market conditions. But just when things started to look up, her main investor called with alarming news. "The market is changing, Samantha," the investor said, their tone serious. "The economy isn't what it was when we started this. We need to scale faster or risk losing everything." Samantha's stomach dropped. The pressure was mounting again. "You need to act fast, Samantha," the investor insisted, "or we'll pull out." The stakes had never been higher. Samantha looked out the window of her office, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. She had two options: scale quickly and risk everything, or play it safe and risk losing her opportunity altogether. With a deep breath, Samantha knew what she had to do. "We scale," she said to herself. The decision was made, and there was no turning back. The pressure was suffocating. With the new investor's demands weighing heavily on her, Samantha knew that she had only one chance to get it right. She'd spent the last week in meetings with potential partners, strategizing new ways to grow the business and expanding her product line. But the more she tried, the more things seemed to spiral. The market was volatile, and competitors were growing fiercer by the day. Then came the opportunity that could change everything: a major corporate partnership. If she could close the deal, the company would have the financial backing and distribution channels it desperately needed to scale quickly. But there was a catch. The corporation was known for pushing its partners to their limits, often dictating terms that left little room for negotiation. As Samantha sat in her office preparing for the pitch, she couldn't help but question if it was the right move. Was it worth selling a part of her vision for the sake of growth? The risk was enormous, but the potential payoff was even greater. The day of the pitch arrived, and Samantha walked into the sleek conference room with her team, ready to face the corporate giants. She had spent hours rehearsing, anticipating every question and objection. But as she stood in front of the board of executives, a wave of nervousness washed over her. "We believe in our product, our team, and the market potential," Samantha began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "But most importantly, we believe in our vision. We are not just offering a product, we are offering a future." The room was silent as she spoke. The executives listened, their faces unreadable, their eyes scanning her every word. "If you partner with us, we will disrupt the market together. But this is a partnership, not a takeover. We are equal players in this vision." For a moment, Samantha feared she had said too much, but then she saw a slight shift in their posture, a glimmer of interest. This was it, the moment of truth. The negotiations were long, tense, and grueling. For every concession Samantha made, the corporation pushed harder. They wanted control over product designs, a larger share of the profits, and a faster timeline. Samantha could feel her resolve weakening. She was being tested, and every fiber of her being screamed to back down. "This is my empire," she thought, her hands clenched in frustration. But then, something clicked. She realized that the more she fought for her vision, the more respect she earned. "If you want this partnership," the head of the corporation said, "you'll have to give up a lot more than you think." Samantha's heart raced, but she wasn't ready to give in. "I'll give you what you need," she replied, her voice calm yet firm, "but only if we can maintain our creative control and vision. I will not compromise that." The tension in the room escalated, but Samantha stood her ground. She wasn't just fighting for her company anymore. She was fighting for everything she believed in. The deal was finally struck. After hours of negotiations, Samantha had managed to keep the heart of her business intact. She was giving up more than she had wanted, but she had secured the most important aspects: creative freedom and a partnership that would propel her company to the next level. As she left the boardroom, a sense of relief washed over her. But it didn't last long. Her phone buzzed, and when she checked it, her stomach dropped. It was a message from her mentor, Richard. "Samantha, there's something you need to know about your investor. I've been doing some digging, and it's not good." Samantha's mind raced. Was the investor playing her? Had they been sabotaging her all along? Her phone buzzed again, and her heart skipped a beat. "Meet me tonight, and I'll explain everything." That evening, Samantha met Richard at a small, dimly lit cafe. He was waiting for her at a corner table, his face serious. "Samantha, I've been watching this investor closely. They've been involved in some shady dealings in the past. They've used companies like yours to manipulate the market, then moved on when they've drained the resources. I didn't want to scare you, but I think you need to know the truth." Samantha felt her world shift beneath her feet. Everything she had worked for, the partnerships, the future of her company, could be in jeopardy. "So what now?" Samantha asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now we fight," Richard said, his tone steady. "You've built something incredible. You're not just going to let them take it from you. But you need to be prepared. They won't back down easily." Samantha's heart raced. She had just secured a massive opportunity, but now, it seemed she was standing on the edge of another battle, one that could change everything. Samantha's mind raced as she left the cafe. Richard's words echoed in her head. "They've been manipulating the market." Her phone buzzed again, and her stomach churned as she saw the name of her investor flash across the screen. She didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, she took a deep breath and walked straight into her office. She needed a plan, and she needed it fast. As she sat down at her desk, she felt the weight of the last few months bearing down on her. Her business was on the brink of something huge, but now, everything was threatened by the very people who had promised to help her succeed. Was it all a game to them? Samantha thought back to her initial pitch to the investor. The hope, the excitement, the belief that they would help her turn her dream into reality. How could she have been so blind? She rubbed her temples, trying to think clearly. There had to be a way out of this. There had to be a way to protect her vision. But first, she had to confront the person behind it all. Later that evening, Samantha called the investor back. The conversation was short, but the tension was palpable. "I know what you've been doing," Samantha said, her voice steady, but filled with underlying anger. "I know you've been manipulating the market, and I'm not going to sit back and let you destroy everything I've worked for." The line was silent for a moment before the investor spoke, their voice calm but calculating. "You've made a lot of money for us, Samantha, but now it's time for you to understand that business is business. You're not the only one who has to play the game." Samantha clenched her fists, the words cutting deep. "I'm not playing your game," she retorted. "I'm building something real, and if you think you can destroy me, you're wrong." The call ended abruptly, leaving Samantha alone with her thoughts. She had made a bold move, but now the real battle had begun. The next few days were a blur of sleepless nights and tense meetings. Samantha gathered her legal team, her best advisors, and anyone who could help her navigate the corporate minefield she had just entered. She knew that fighting the investor would not be easy. They had more resources, more connections, and more power than she could have imagined. But Samantha wasn't backing down. "We need to protect the company and its vision," she said to her team, her voice unwavering. "We've come this far, and I won't let anyone take that away from us." Her team rallied around her, offering support and advice. But deep down, Samantha knew this was more than just a business fight. It was about her integrity, her dreams, and the future she had fought so hard to build. It was personal now. "We will not be bullied," Samantha declared. "We will fight, and we will win." The legal battle had begun. Samantha's team worked tirelessly to expose the investors' unethical practices, gathering evidence, preparing statements, and strategizing their next steps. But just when it seemed like they were gaining ground, a new challenge emerged. The investor had reached out to a powerful media outlet, launching a smear campaign against Samantha and her company. The headlines read, "The Startup Queen's Dark Side. Is she really the innovator she claims to be?" Samantha's heart sank as she read the article. The accusations were false, exaggerated, and meant to destroy her reputation. "This is war," Samantha muttered under her breath as she stared at the screen. But she wouldn't let them win. "If they want to fight dirty, I'll fight dirty," she said, her eyes burning with determination. It was time to turn the tables. The battle for control over her company intensified. Samantha fought back with everything she had: strategic press releases, social media campaigns, and public speeches that portrayed the truth behind her business. The smear campaign only made her more determined to expose the investors' manipulation. But the pressure began to take its toll. Samantha hadn't slept in days, and her focus was starting to slip. It was during one of these moments of exhaustion that her loyal confidant, Jake, returned. "I've been following the news, Sam. I see what's going on. Let me help," Jake said, his voice apologetic but earnest. Samantha looked at him, torn between her anger and her need for help. "You betrayed me, Jake," she replied, her voice cold. "How can I trust you now?" But Jake was unrelenting. "I was wrong, Sam. I know that. But I'm here to make things right." Samantha hesitated, her heart heavy with the weight of the decision. She needed all the help she could get, but could she really trust him again? The day after Jake's return, Samantha sat in her office, contemplating the choice she was about to make. She had given him a chance, a fragile thread of hope, but the truth was, she wasn't sure she could ever fully trust him again. Her mind was a whirlwind of doubt. Can I afford to bring him back into the fold? As the morning sunlight filtered through the windows, Samantha knew that she needed to focus on her company, not her emotions. I need to take the next step, she thought, tapping her fingers on the desk. The media frenzy was still ongoing, and the smear campaign against her was gaining traction. It was clear. The battle wasn't just about business anymore. It was about survival. She couldn't afford distractions, but Jake's loyalty was something that still lingered in her mind. If he's serious about making things right, he'll prove it, she told herself. With a deep breath, she called him into her office. Jake, she began, her voice firm. You want to help? Then show me that you mean it. Jake entered the office, his posture tense, his expression showing that he was fully aware of the gravity of the situation. I know I can't undo the past, Sam, he began, his voice filled with regret. But I'm ready to put everything I have into fixing this. I'll do whatever it takes. Samantha didn't respond right away. Instead, she studied him, her old friend, her former business partner. Could she really forgive him? The temptation to close the door on him entirely was strong, but something in his eyes told her he wasn't just making empty promises. You've got one shot, Jake, she said, her voice sharp. Show me you can be trusted and I'll let you in. But make no mistake, if you betray me again, it's over for good. Jake nodded, his resolve hardening. You have my word. No more games. Samantha met his gaze, searching for any sign of deceit. But for now, she had to trust him. Samantha put her trust in Jake, but she didn't let her guard down. Together, they went through the legal documents, created a counter-narrative to combat the media attacks, and reorganized the company's strategy to recover from the damage. But the corporate battle wasn't over. The next hurdle came when the investors' team tried to force a merger between her company and another competitor, one that had a reputation for shady dealings. They want us to sell out, Jake, Samantha said, her voice filled with frustration. They think we're weak because of the smear campaign, but I'm not selling. Not now, not ever. Jake nodded, his loyalty reaffirmed. We fight back, he said simply. Samantha's heart swelled with a mix of gratitude and fear. Could they really pull this off? With everything on the line, the fear of failure still gnawed at her, but her resolve was stronger than ever. She wasn't about to let anyone take her empire from her, not without a fight. As the days passed, Samantha became increasingly aware of the weight of her decisions. Every move she made was more important than ever. One evening, after a long day of meetings, she sat in her office alone, staring at the calendar filled with deadlines, investor meetings, and press events. Her phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't an email or message. It was a reminder from her assistant about the upcoming board meeting. It would be a moment to present her final decision on the merger. Either she fought back or she surrendered control of her company. Samantha stood up and paced the room. The weight of it all seemed unbearable, but deep down, she knew what had to be done. I'm doing this for the company, she said to herself, and for my vision. I'm not backing down. That night she prepared for the board meeting, determined to show them that she would not be intimidated. The day of the board meeting arrived, and Samantha felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. As she entered the room, the executives and investors looked at her, their eyes sharp and calculating. She could feel the tension in the air. This was the moment that would determine the future of her company. We've worked hard to get to this point, Samantha began, her voice steady and strong. But I am here to tell you that I will not be selling out. I will not compromise the values that this company was built on. We will scale on our terms. She paused for a moment, allowing the weight of her words to sink in. I've brought something new to the table, and I'm asking you to trust in it. Together, we will build an empire, not just a business. The room was silent for a long moment, but then one by one, the investors began to nod. Samantha had done it. She had won them over with her vision, her passion, and her refusal to give in. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time in a long while, Samantha felt the weight lift from her shoulders. The final decision had been made. The board voted in favor of Samantha's vision, and the company moved forward, stronger than ever. Samantha stood in the company's new headquarters, looking out over the city. Everything she had worked for, all the sleepless nights and sacrifices, had led her to this moment. She had proven herself, not just to the world, but to herself. "We did it," she whispered, a smile tugging at her lips. But even with the victory, she knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. She had built an empire, but the real work was only beginning. Still, for the first time in a long while, Samantha felt at peace. She had faced down her fears, overcome every obstacle, and emerged victorious. Samantha's phone buzzed with a message from Richard, her mentor. "I always knew you had it in you." She smiled, her fingers hovering over the screen. Richard had been there when no one else believed in her. His support had been invaluable. She typed back, "We did it together. I couldn't have done it without your guidance." She had learned so much on this journey, not just about business, but about herself. She had faced betrayal, doubt, and failure, but she had always come back stronger. "This is just the beginning," Samantha thought as she looked at the message. She was ready for whatever came next. Samantha stepped outside the office, breathing in the cool evening air. The city felt alive, and so did she. She had built something from the ground up, something that was now unstoppable. As she walked down the street, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. From a woman with nothing but a vision to the leader of a thriving empire. There had been many moments of doubt, but those moments only made her stronger. "This is my empire," she thought, with a sense of pride. And nothing at all, would ever make her give it up. As she walked, her phone rang. It was Jake. "I know things were rough, but I'm proud of you," he said. Samantha paused for a moment, the wind rustling her hair. She had forgiven him, but they both knew that their paths had changed. "Thank you, Jake," she replied. "We both made our mistakes, but we learned. It's time to move forward." With that, she hung up, her heart a little lighter. She had forgiven, but she had also moved on. She had her company, her vision, and her future. That was all that mattered now. As the night fell, Samantha returned to her apartment, her mind at ease. She had faced the toughest battles, both in business and in herself. She had built an empire, but more importantly, she had built the strength to protect it. Looking out over the city lights, she smiled. This was just the beginning.